You have sat across from someone you love and know, with a certainty that settled in your chest like stone, that they were lying to you, not because they stumbled over their words, not because they avoided your eyes, but because you felt the lie land in your body before your mind had time to name it. And when you said something gently, carefully, they looked at you as though you were the problem, as though seeing clearly were an accusation. Welcome to Power and Myth. What the ancients called the oracle's burden, Jung understood as a specific cognitive architecture, introverted intuition operating at a depth most people will never access. Today, we're going to name the paradox that sits at the center of the seer archetype. You see everyone, and no one sees you, not because you are invisible, but because the very thing that makes you perceive others with such precision is the thing that makes you almost impossible to perceive in return. This is not loneliness in the ordinary sense. This is structural isolation. It is built into the architecture of what you are, and once you understand why, something shifts, not the isolation itself, but what it means. Let us begin with what you actually do when you walk into a room, because most people, including most INFJs, have never had it described accurately. You do not read body language. That is far too simple a description for what occurs. You absorb the entire emotional field of the space, the tension between two people who greeted each other too brightly, the grief someone carries is sitting just beneath their composure, the performance of confidence from the person who arrived 15 minutes early because they were terrified of being late. You take all of this in within seconds, not as individual observations, but as a single, complete knowing. You do not piece it together, it arrives whole. And here is the part that creates the wound. You then instinctively adjust yourself to what the room needs. You soften for the grieving one. You ask the nervous one a question that lets them feel competent. You create a bridge between the two who are pretending nothing is wrong. You do all of this whilst appearing to simply be present, pleasant, and participating. No one in that room knows what you just did. No one sees the labour. They only feel the result, which is that somehow, mysteriously, everything felt a little easier once you arrived, and you leave carrying everything you absorbed, with no one having asked you a single genuine question about yourself. This is the seer's daily experience. It is invisible work, performed by someone who is, by the very nature of that work, rendered invisible themselves. Jung wrote that the intuitive type is concerned not with the present moment, but with future possibilities. But he understood something deeper than that clinical description suggests. He understood that those who perceive the invisible scaffolding of reality pay a price for that perception. The price is that you become your own scaffolding. Structural, essential, unseen. You hold things together that others do not even realize need holding. And because it looks effortless, because you have been doing it since childhood, because you learned very early that showing the strain would make others uncomfortable, no one thinks to look behind the composure and ask what it costs you. This is not self-pity, this is the seer's inheritance, and it has been this way for thousands of years. Kings and generals consulted the oracle at Delphi. They came for her knowing. They did not come for her. She was a function, a conduit, the most powerful source of insight in the ancient world, and no one in any surviving text bothered to record whether she was happy. And this is the shadow side that INFJs rarely speak of. The seer does not only go unseen by others. The seer begins to go unseen by themselves. When your entire orientation is outward perception, when your gift is the ability to map other people's inner landscapes with devastating accuracy, you can lose contact with your own. You know what your partner needs before they speak. You sense when your friend is pulling away 3 weeks before they cancel plans. You can feel the emotional weather of a room shift in real time. But ask yourself this: when did someone last know something about you that you had not deliberately revealed? When did someone read you the way you read everyone else? When did someone sit across from you and say, not because you told them, not because you hinted, but because they saw it, that you were not all right? The silence that follows that question is the seer's loneliest territory, because you have spent so long being the one who perceives that you have forgotten what it feels like to be perceived. And part of you, the part that learned very young that your seeing made people uncomfortable, is not entirely sure you want to be seen at all, because being seen means being known. and being known means someone might finally discover that the person who holds everything together is quietly falling apart. This is where the seer meets the exile. Because the INFJ who sees too clearly does not simply experience loneliness. They experience a particular kind of exile that is almost impossible to articulate. You are not excluded from connection. You are present in every room, every conversation, every relationship. But you are present as the translator, the mirror, the one who makes others feel understood. You are rarely present as yourself. And over time, this creates a strange dissociation. You begin to wonder if there is a self beneath all the seeing. If you removed the perception, the pattern recognition, the instinctive adjusting, if you stopped reading rooms and holding space and sensing what others need, who would be left, what would be left? This is not an identity crisis in the way psychology typically describes it. This is an archetypal confrontation. The seer, standing at the edge of their own gift, asks whether the gift has consumed the person who carries it. Jung called this the problem of identification with the archetype. When you become so merged with your function, with your role as the one who sees, that you lose contact with the individual human being beneath it. The seer becomes a role rather than a person, and roles do not get to be lonely, roles do not get to need, roles simply perform their function and wait to be consulted again. If that sentence landed somewhere in your chest, it is because you have lived it. You have been the wise friend, the intuitive one, the person others come to when they need to be understood. And you have played that role so perfectly for so long that you are not entirely certain anyone in your life knows the difference between the role and you. Some days you are not certain you know the difference either. But here is what most people never understand about this. The seer's isolation is not a problem to be solved. It is a threshold to be crossed, because the moment you recognize that you have been living inside the archetype rather than carrying it, something becomes possible that was not possible before. You can begin to let the seeing be a gift you possess, rather than an identity you inhabit. You can begin to tolerate being seen, not by adjusting yourself to what someone else needs to perceive, but by allowing yourself to be witnessed in your actual complexity. This is individuation. Jung's word for the long, difficult, sacred process of becoming who you actually are, rather than who your gifts have required you to be. For the seer, individuation means learning that you are not your perception. You are the one who perceives. And that one, that human being beneath the archetype, deserves to be known. Not as the oracle, not as the wise one, not as the one who always understands, but as the person who sometimes does not understand at all, who is sometimes frightened, who sometimes needs desperately to be held by someone who needs nothing in return. The ancient seers were not solitary because they chose isolation. They were solitary because seeing is a burden, and most people instinctively step away from those who carry it. But the great secret, the one the myths rarely tell, is that the seer's deepest longing is not to see more clearly. It is to be seen at all, to find even one person who looks at them and perceives not the function, not the gift, not the usefulness, but the human being who's been standing behind their own eyes this entire time, watching everyone, waiting, just once, to be watched in return. You are not too much. You are not too intense. You are not too perceptive for connection. You are carrying an ancient pattern, and that pattern includes the ache. But it also includes the possibility of being met, not by someone who needs your sight, by someone who simply wants to know the seer. If something in this video reached the part of you that has been unseen for longer than you can remember, I want you to tell me in the comments. Which moment finally named it? Which sentence did you have to pause on? Subscribe if you want to keep walking this territory together, because this is power and myth, and you are not alone in what you carry. You never were. You simply had not found the others yet. Until next time, find your power, know your myth.